Have you ever felt completely alone in your struggles, even while surrounded by people who claim to care? Have you ever wondered why some believers seem to walk with unshakable confidence, while others stumble through life feeling spiritually orphaned? The difference isn't in their circumstances, it's in their understanding of a promise that most Christians recite, but few truly grasp. Psalm 12:1 contains one of Scripture's most powerful promises of divine protection, yet it's also one of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible. Tonight, we're going to uncover the hidden layers of this ancient song that can transform not just how you pray, but how you live every single day. When the psalmist wrote these words, he wasn't sitting comfortably in a peaceful sanctuary. He was a pilgrim, walking dusty roads toward Jerusalem, surrounded by dangers both seen and unseen. This wasn't theoretical theology. This was survival faith. And that's exactly what makes it so relevant for your life today. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? This isn't just a beautiful, poetic opening. This is the cry of someone who has reached the end of their own strength. It's the moment when pride finally breaks and the soul looks beyond itself for rescue. But here's what most people miss about this verse. In ancient Hebrew culture, mountains weren't just scenic backdrops. They were places of worship, both true worship and false worship. The pagans built their altars on high places, and unfortunately, even God's people sometimes got confused about where true help could be found. So, when the psalmist lifts his eyes to the mountains, he's actually standing at a spiritual crossroads. He's looking at all the places where people typically seek help: wealth, power, religion, human systems, and he's about to make a radical declaration that changes everything. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. This isn't just a nice religious answer. This is a revolutionary statement of dependence that cuts through every false security we've ever trusted. Think about it. If God created the mountains, He's obviously bigger than the mountains. If He formed the valleys, He's certainly powerful enough to walk with you through yours. But accessing this promise requires more than just knowing the right Bible verses. It demands that we stop looking for help in all the wrong places. How many times have you placed your ultimate trust in your career advancement, your financial portfolio, your social connections, or even your religious activities? The first hidden truth in Psalm 121 is this: God's help is only available to those who stop seeking security in things that can't actually secure them. This psalm was sung by pilgrims, tired, hungry, sometimes bleeding travelers who were making their way to Jerusalem for worship. They weren't comfortable churchgoers listening to inspiring music. They were real people with real problems, walking real roads, facing real dangers. And they discovered something that changed how they viewed every challenge. Their help came from a source that never failed. Indeed, He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. This verse contains a promise that should revolutionize how you think about God's presence in your life. While you're sleeping, worrying, or completely unaware of spiritual battles happening around you, there's a divine vigilance that never takes a break. Most of us understand sleep as a necessity. Our bodies need rest, our minds need recovery, our spirits need renewal. But God operates outside these limitations. There's no shift change in heaven, no vacation time for divine protection, no moment when you're left unguarded. Charles Spurgeon once observed that hell never sleeps. It's constantly plotting, scheming, looking for opportunities to destroy. But here's the incredible truth. God doesn't sleep either. While darkness strategizes, light is already writing the final chapter of victory. How many times have you woken up in the middle of the night with unexplained anxiety, only to have peace settle over you without understanding why? How many times have you faced a temptation that should have destroyed you, but somehow you found strength to resist? How many times have you narrowly avoided disasters that you didn't even know were approaching? That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was the sleepless guardian of Israel, watching over every detail of your life with an intensity of love that never diminishes. But this promise also confronts our pride. How often do we credit our own discipline, wisdom, or spiritual maturity for keeping us on track? How often do we go to bed thinking we're safe because we did everything right that day? The truth is humbling. You remain standing not because of your strength, but because of His vigilance. You wake up each morning not because you've earned another day, but because eternal eyes have been watching over you all night long. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. This imagery reveals one of the most intimate aspects of God's care. He doesn't just protect you from a distance, He positions Himself at the exact point where you're most vulnerable. In ancient warfare, soldiers carried shields on their left arms, leaving their right side exposed while wielding weapons. The right hand was the fighting hand, but it was also the vulnerable side. God says He stations Himself precisely there, not to control your battles, but to cover your weakness. A shadow doesn't make noise. It doesn't demand attention or credit. It simply accompanies, faithful and constant, whether you acknowledge it or not. Even when you turn away from the light, the shadow remains. Even when you make poor choices, it doesn't abandon you. This is the kind of love that doesn't compete for recognition. God's presence in your life isn't theatrical, it's practical. He doesn't need to announce His protection to make it real. He holds the invisible shield at the exact moment you need it most. Think about the times you felt most exposed, most criticized, most alone in your struggles. The promise of Psalm 121 is that even in those moments, especially in those moments, there's a divine presence shielding the side of your life that's under attack. This shade at your right hand represents God's understanding of your humanity. He knows you're fragile. He knows you get tired. He knows you make mistakes. And instead of withdrawing His protection when you're imperfect, He moves closer to cover the areas where you're most likely to be wounded. The sun will not harm you by day nor the moon by night. Most people read this as poetic language about weather protection, but Scripture never wastes words. Every detail carries spiritual weight that goes beyond the literal meaning. The sun represents the visible attacks, the confrontations, pressures, and struggles that everyone can see. These are the challenges that come in the light of day: financial problems, relationship conflicts, health issues, professional disappointments. They're obvious, immediate, and impossible to hide. But the moon represents something entirely different: the invisible attacks that happen in darkness. These are the battles that no one else witnesses, the mental torment at 3 a.m., the spiritual doubts that you can't explain to anyone, the deep loneliness that persists even in crowded rooms, the fear that grips you when you're completely alone. In ancient cultures, prolonged exposure to moonlight was believed to cause madness. That's where we get the word lunatic. There was an understanding that nighttime brought different kinds of dangers, attacks on the mind and spirit that were just as real as physical threats. God's promise covers both. He'll protect you from the scorching heat of public trials, and He'll also guard you from the cold attacks that happen when no one else is watching. This means you're not alone in your midnight struggles. When anxiety attacks and you can't explain why, when depression settles over you without apparent reason, when spiritual doubt creeps in despite your best efforts to maintain faith, you're still under divine protection. The promise isn't that you won't experience these attacks. The promise is that they won't ultimately harm you. Your soul may be troubled, but it won't be lost. Your faith may be tested, but it won't be destroyed.
Your nights may be long, but your hope won't die. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. This final promise extends God's protection beyond just dangerous situations. It covers every transition, every beginning, every ending, throughout your entire existence. Life is essentially a series of comings and goings. We enter seasons without warning and leave them without understanding. We begin relationships, careers, and chapters of life, and we also experience losses, endings, and painful goodbyes. Most of the time, we have no idea why things change when they do. But this verse reveals that nothing happens outside of God's watchful care. You didn't enter that difficult season by accident. You weren't removed from that comfortable situation without purpose. You weren't brought to your current circumstances randomly. God is the guardian of thresholds. He's present at every doorway where one thing ends and another begins. He watches over the sacred spaces between what was and what will be. And here's the crucial truth. He doesn't just permit these transitions, He protects you within them. Every change carries spiritual significance. When doors close, fear whispers that you've been abandoned. When new opportunities open, pride tries to steal the glory that belongs to God alone. That's why the Psalm promises divine watching over both your coming and going. The world celebrates impressive beginnings, but God is equally present in quiet endings. Many people start their faith journey with enthusiasm and big promises, but fewer finish well. True spiritual maturity isn't measured by how boldly you begin, but how faithfully you continue through every transition life brings. This promise extends into eternity, both now and forevermore. God's watchful care over your life isn't limited to your earthly existence. The same divine attention that guards your steps today will continue beyond death into eternal glory. Understanding Psalm 121 changes everything about how you approach daily life. You're not just walking through ordinary streets. You're moving through sacred space under the constant attention of divine love. Every step you take is observed, protected, and guided by the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. This doesn't mean your life will be free from problems. The psalm doesn't promise the absence of mountains, valleys, heat, or darkness. What it promises is the presence of God within every challenge. It guarantees that no attack, visible or invisible, will ultimately succeed in destroying what God has determined to protect. When you truly grasp this promise, it transforms how you face uncertainty. You can walk into unknown situations with confidence, not because you control the outcome, but because you trust the one who watches over every detail. You can rest at night knowing that the same God who protected you through the day continues his vigilance while you sleep. You can endure criticism without being crushed, because you know there's divine shade covering your most vulnerable places. You can survive internal battles with anxiety and doubt, because God's protection extends to the attacks that no one else can see or understand. Most importantly, you can embrace life's transitions with peace, knowing that the God who watched over your past will also guide your future. Every coming and going happens under his careful supervision. This is the hidden promise of Psalm 121 that most believers miss. You have never walked alone, and you never will. From your first breath to your final heartbeat, and throughout eternity beyond, you remain under the watchful care of the one whose love never fails and whose attention never wavers. The Lord is your keeper, your shade, your protector from every form of harm. He guards your coming and going both now and forevermore. This isn't just beautiful poetry, it's your spiritual reality. Live like you believe it. If this message has stirred something in your heart, I want to encourage you to take a step of faith right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our deep dives into God's Word. Each video is designed to help you discover truths that can transform your daily walk with Christ. In the comments below, share which part of Psalm 121 spoke most powerfully to your current situation. And if you're facing a specific challenge right now where you need God's protection and guidance, leave your prayer request in the comments. Our community believes in the power of agreement and prayer, and we'd be honored to stand with you. Finally, if you know someone who's struggling with fear, anxiety, or feeling alone in their battles, share this video with them. You might be the instrument God uses to remind them that they're never truly alone. The Lord is their keeper, their shade, their protector, both now and forevermore.